Hey everyone, Morgan here. So today I wanted to talk about the food crisis that could potentially be happening. Now, I first want to talk about the fact that, I'm not a hyperbole channel. I try not to really boost things out of proportion, but I think this is something that really does need to be talked about simply because of the Midwest flooding. So basically what's happening is that there was a whole bunch of flooding that happened in the Midwest, and it's basically annihilated a lot of farms and a lot of crops. And what's happening right now is, because these crops are flooded, they are no longer viable, and they won't be viable for at least another year or two. Like, they will not even be able to produce anything for at least another probably 2 years or so, because they can't even get going again for like another year or something. That's what I've been reading anyway. And so it's going to take a while for these crops to get back. So because of this, there could be an increase in prices, certain prices for grains, soybeans, things like that, corn, things like that, because of this pretty big hit of these crops, okay? In saying that, there are ways that we can prep for this, and there are ways that we can prep for any possible future food crises. Now, when you Google food crisis, you will come across food crises that have happened before, okay? These things have happened, and so we can learn from history and know how to be better prepared for it, excuse me. As preppers, we look at history and we say, okay, well, I don't want to get stuck in the situation where, I'm going to be without food, or there's this increase in food and now there's these riots and everything. For instance, back in 2007, 2008, there was a world food crisis. And I am actually going to read from here just real quick. The initial cause of the late 2006 price spikes included droughts in grain-producing nations and rising oil prices. Okay, so back in 2007 and 2008, there was a global crisis that caused political and economic instability and social unrest in both poor and developed nations. Although the media spotlight focused on the riots that ensued in the face of high prices, the ongoing crisis of food insecurity had been years in the making. A couple other reasons could be, natural disasters like we're seeing here with the flooding in the Midwest. Could be disease. One cause of food crisis that happens in many places around the world is poverty. You just cannot afford food, you can't get food, you're having to scrounge, whatever it is. And this is happening in many places around the world, and people think that it can't happen here in the US. But one really good example of how it did kind of happen was in 9/11. There was a lot of poverty happening there, and there were a lot of long-term effects. We have to think that if the United States economy falls, then there would be a big food crisis. And people have been talking about for a long time how our economy is really on that brink, right? So how do we prepare for a food crisis? Well, I think it's going to be how we would prepare for anything else, okay? You're going to stock your food and water, you're going to stock your first aid, you're going to stock, all of these prepper gears and food supplies. Now, a couple tips that I would keep in mind when it comes to storing food and keeping food would be, first of all, try to find, food from like the dollar store, 99-cent store, Dollar General, these places that have more affordable foods for everybody, and you can still find your grains and your canned foods and a whole bunch of other stuff, but on a really reasonable budget. Also, I would really get into couponing, because couponing is going to be extremely important. Look into sales cycles. I have a video about that. Get things on extreme sales, and again, couponing, always beneficial to everybody. Time consuming, yes, but beneficial. So maybe you would want to bump up your food and water storage a little bit, instead of getting those 2 extra cans a week, you would get those 4 extra cans or something like that, get a few extra bags of rice and flour and, things to make things. But outside of actually storing food, what I would highly suggest is learning how to grow your own food. Knowing how to grow your own food is going to be extremely important. You can grow food year round if you really plan it right, especially if you can plant indoors, you can build a little greenhouse. There are so many ways that you can grow your own food. You know, you just have to have a plan and know how to actually garden. Gardening is a skill, 100%. And, you know, you could merge it with your food that you already have stored along with, you know, your gardening that you're doing and any small game, you know, that you're getting, fishing, anything like that, you know, trying to be a little more self-sustaining so that you're not having to totally rely on these things. You know, instead of getting flour, you would get, you know, like a big tub of, you know, actually wheat berries, and then grind your own, you know, flour, stuff like that. One thing you may want to consider also is looking more locally sourced stuff. Go to farmers markets, you know, locally sourced beef and locally sourced vegetables, locally sourced, you know, food in general. Our grocery store, we have a local grocery store, and they local source a lot of stuff. So you may not see impact of rising prices on certain things, especially if they're local, you know, and they're not having to be imported, you know, from a variety of different places. Now, of course, there are, you know, vegetables and fruits that, you know, happening year round that, you know, sometimes they have to import because they can't do it locally or something like that, you know. So that's something to also keep in mind, you know, what is in season locally that you can get. And not only that, but then how can you preserve and, you know, keep, you know, buy that stuff in bulk and then preserve it, right? Through dehydrating or canning or whatever the case may be. So sourcing locally is a really good one. So a food crisis can definitely happen. You know, I mean, people are talking about avocados, you know, not being able to be sourced from Mexico because, you know, of what's going on at the border. So, you know, but we can get avocados from, we actually get avocados from a lot of different places. People are just freaking out that we won't get our avocados from Mexico anymore. We would have to get them from all, you know, really up our supply from all the other sources. So that could definitely be a crisis, because then price would have to increase because they're having to get avocados more from all those other places instead of from there. So it just kind of depends. Anyway, keep an eye out for this stuff. And the best way to prep is to just stockpile a little bit more. Try to be a little more self-sufficient with your preps, and just keep an eye on what's going on. I hope I didn't go too fast with this. If you have any other suggestions for how to prepare for any food crisis, let me know down in the comments, and let's create a dialogue here. Thank you all so much for watching. Conquer tomorrow by preparing today. Talk to y'all tomorrow. Bye.